Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Comic Source. I'm your host, Jace. This is a creator-owned spotlight. We're here today to talk about a Zoop campaign for a Bongo comic. Originally, Roswell, Little Green Man. I have the writer, the artist, the creator, Bill Morrison, joining me today. Bill, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Jace. I appreciate you taking the time as well. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so everybody, the campaign has just gone live within the last day or two, but it's already funded. In fact, it's over 150% funded. So this is one of those situations where you know if you back it, you're going to get it. So link in the show notes to go and check out the campaign. But Bill, for anybody who's not familiar, this is just such a great story, such a great world that you created. Why don't you give everybody kind of the elevator pitch and tell them what Roswell's about?
Sure. Well, Roswell is basically the name of the alien who survived the Roswell UFO crash. So everyone's heard of that famous crash in 1947. There's an actual eyewitness. I was reading a book on the incident, and this nurse at the hospital where they brought the bodies originally of these aliens, supposedly in body bags in the back of an army truck, said she saw one that was still alive. So she saw an alien like moving around. And that gave me a chill up my spine when I heard that or when I read that. And I thought, wow, like I'm reading this book and it's all about, it's just talking about the dead alien bodies that they recovered at this crash site. And then suddenly this one eyewitness says, no, one of them was alive. And that set me off on a journey. It just set my mind wandering, and I started thinking, well, what if there was an alien who survived the crash, and what if he was stranded here on Earth and he somehow escapes the grasp of the military and he encounters other humans and they're kind of devoted to trying to get him back to his home planet. And that's really what it's about. It's like a fish out of water kind of story because Roswell's trapped in this world that he doesn't understand. And his backstory is that he was a reporter on his home planet. And he had kind of a dead-end job. He wasn't getting the assignments that he really wanted. And he really craved adventure. And he accidentally gets his wish when he's on board this UFO or this saucer that's headed for Earth. And it takes off takes off before he can get off the ship. And so he's sort of a reluctant stowaway on this voyage to Earth. And he's the only one who survives the crash. So now he's stuck here in 1947.
Yeah,
and that's where it starts.
Yeah. What I love, everybody, if you've read the first issue, he's got this, if anybody, I'm going to date myself here, but like Leave It to Beaver, he's got this kind of Eddie Haskell kind of friend that's like, oh, you want adventure, you want to, advance yourself in your job, that kind of talks him into getting involved and going and checking out the saucer, and then things go downhill for him from there. But what I find interesting, you talk about kind of the real world events that inspired this. You could have gone in really any number of directions. You chose to kind of make it humorous and like you said, the fish out of water type stories. You could have leaned into the horror. You could have leaned into the mystery. What was it about this story that you decided to kind of lean into that fish out of water and go with kind of the humorous kind of angle for this story?
Well, it's funny. The way the whole idea of me doing my own book started was with Matt Groening. So I was working for Matt at Bongo, and very early on, like in the early 90s, after we had just started the company, Matt told me and a couple of other principals, hey, if you ever come up with an idea for a comic and you want to do something creator-owned at Bongo, let me know and we'll talk about it. And if it seems like something that fits the vibe of Bongo, then we'll do it. And I think it took me about 2 or 3 years of thinking because I had this great opportunity just kind of thrown in my lap,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have an idea. And I thought, you know, every so often it was like always in the back of my mind, and every so often I would think, gosh, you got to jump on that. You know, this is a great opportunity, and you're blowing it. You know, you're not working hard enough, or you're not spending enough time and thought or whatever, but you've got to come up with something good. And I just happened to be reading this paperback on the Roswell incident, and I was curious about and it wasn't something that was like the X-Files hadn't dealt with Roswell yet. And there, you know, all the movies that came out in the late 90s, those hadn't really happened yet. So Roswell was still kind of an obscure topic that not a lot of people knew about. And but I was curious about it. I'd heard something, and I started reading the book. And I wasn't reading it for the purpose of coming up with an idea. It was just a casual thing. But when I got to that part about the eyewitness saying that one of them was alive, everything just started opening up to me. And once I came up with the idea that there's this character who's stranded on Earth, the character started kind of, it sounds weird to say this, but when you create a character, at some point they start talking to you and telling you what their story is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they start telling you what their personality is. And I think probably the humor part of it came from just the fact that Bongo is a humor company. You know, we were doing the Simpsons comics. We hadn't started Futurama yet, but, you know, we're doing all these Simpsons comics. And I did know that Matt wanted it to be something that would fit with other things we were doing. So I think the idea of making it serious or getting into more the horror or sci-fi aspect of it probably didn't occur to me because, you know, Matt had already set up that it had to fit with the Bongo line. So that probably didn't occur to me, but I think just the idea of making it a fun adventure probably came from Bone, from Jeff Smith's Bone, because, you know, I'm a big fan of Bone, and I was reading it, and you know, given the opportunity to do my creator-own thing, I needed a model. I needed something, you know, since I'd never done that before, I needed something that was like kind of a stepping off point. And I think thinking of Bone, I thought, well, if it was something like that, where it's an ongoing adventure, it's funny, but it can also be a little scary. It can have drama and suspense, but there's always that kind of comic relief. So I think that was what sort of sent me in that direction.
And it has a really timeless feel. I mean, you mentioned Simpsons. Roswell, actually, everybody had his first appearance in a Simpsons comic, and if I'm not mistaken, there are a couple of those as a reward. I guess those must be your personal copies from your.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So everybody, if you want a first appearance, those are available in the rewards. But better go grab them. I imagine they'll go relatively quickly.
Yeah, and there's actually some Spanish versions. We had at Bongo, we had a licensee in Mexico that did our Simpsons comics. And so because this appeared in the back of Simpsons 19, the very first appearance of Roswell, you know, when they were printing their version of Simpsons 19, if they had left the Roswell part out, they would have had 5 less pages.
Right.
That first story was serialized in 4 issues, so it was probably 5 or 6 pages that they would have had to find a way to fill those pages. So they came to me and they said, "Hey, can we do a Spanish version of Roswell?" And I think they did it just to make it easy on themselves.
Yeah,
but it was pretty cool that that they did that. So now I have in the campaign, I've got a handful of those issues, and I've also got some German editions of the first issue of Roswell. So after the appearance in Simpsons comics, the very first issue of Roswell in its own title.
Yeah, so you mentioned being a little bit inspired by Bone. It is a fun adventure. It is humorous and what have you. And so much of why it works is that idea of a fish out of water, like you said, which can lead to humorous situations. But the other thing I give you a lot of credit for is the supporting cast, right? We have the redheaded waitress. I can't never remember her name. Alice?
Julian Fry.
June. There you go, June. And then the
No,
cowboy.
Julian.
Yeah,
Julian.
Julie. Yeah.
Her name's a pun. It's based on a type of French fry called Julian fries.
Julian fries. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
How could I have forgotten that? But then you also have the cowboy, and again, being that it's set in 1947, you kind of lean into the tropes of the time. With the waitress at the local diner, and all the cops have a crush on her and what have you, and then kind of this idea of the cowboy. Certainly at that time, westerns were kind of the fictional story du jour that everybody, I think every network show practically at that time was a western. So can you talk a little bit about developing the supporting cast around Roswell, and not just because I don't think it would work as well if you didn't at various times it's either Julian or it's the cowboy that are kind of playing the straight man to him. Can you talk a little bit about developing the supporting cast?
Yeah, the whole idea of a cowboy riding a giant jackrabbit comes from these old postcards that used to be really popular back in the 40s and 50s. Like if you went to Texas, the whole thing about Texas is everything's bigger in Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they used to have these postcards that they were just gag postcards that would say, greetings from Texas, wish you were here or whatever. And they would have a picture that this is before Photoshop. So somebody would, retouch a photo and have they'd take like a photo of a cowboy from a horse, cut that out, and then stick him on a rabbit with a saddle, and then put in a background that's like a desert scene. But the cowboy's small and the jackrabbit's really big.
Yeah.
And, it was just one of those funny things that everybody copied. So there are, dozens and dozens of different depictions of this cowboy on a jackrabbit. And when I was starting to figure out Roswell and figure out who the cast would be, I kind of went to my scrap file as an illustrator. So illustrators keep reference files. Maybe not so much nowadays because of Google, because anything you want to look up, you can just Google it and get a million pictures of whatever you're looking for. But when I started as an illustrator, I started a file just like all illustrators did in the pre-internet days. So I had some of these old postcards, and I had images of pinup girls and diner waitresses, from advertisements. And these are all things that I've just saved over the years. Mm-hmm. So I went back to that visual reference file to sort of look for these interesting archetypes of characters, like kind of unofficial characters that existed back then. So they're not like real characters, but they're characters that were in the popular culture as advertising mascots or postcards or pinup cards or whatever.
So pulling them from the reference like that, then you still had to flesh them out and give them personalities or what have you. At what point did you realize, okay, I really hit on something here? Because it's such an eclectic group, and certainly when Julian meets Roswell for the first time, it doesn't exactly go well.
No.
But they eventually become friends, and it is a good sort of eclectic group. So was it a few issues? Was it right away? When did you know you really had something that worked?
I think when I really knew it worked was when I pitched it to Matt Groening, and he chuckled a few times, and he said, "This is good. I like it." But up until that point, I wasn't really sure because it is a little bit oddball. Like the mix of characters there's no formula there. it's a lot of it is based on stuff that I just like to draw. Um, so I'm like, I love the romance of the Old West that existed prior to, like 1970. So how about a cowboy? And when I came up with Julian, she's kind of based on my wife. Um, and I wrote her with a bit of a feminist perspective because she's a very talented, really actually genius level inventor. But because her existence is in the 1940s, she's not able to get a job. She wants
Yeah.
to work as a scientist and inventor, but they give all those jobs to men back
Yep.
then. So she's stuck being a diner waitress and forced to sort of come up with these inventions in her spare time on her own in her little trailer. And again, the trailer that she lives in, it's an Airstream. And I love those. I just love the design of those. And I thought, that's just something that would be fun for me to draw. Like if I have to draw something over and over again, I want it to be something that I'm in love with. So the Buick Roadmaster, which is her automobile, I specifically picked that because that's something that I like to draw. I just love the design of it. And I made it kind of like the Batmobile. I'm a huge Batman fan.
Yeah.
And I thought, she's got to have this car that's got all these push buttons on the dash. So whatever jam she needs to get out of, she can push a button and there's going to be a smoke screen or an oil slick that comes out the back of the car or a machine gun or a ray gun that pops up out of the back. And, it's kind of like her utility belt.
Yeah, it's awesome, and it really, again, all ages has that timeless feel. It kind of leans into the idea of what, if you go back to 1947 and look at the science fiction and the stories they were telling, and what they predicted the future would be like. It just has that kind of quirky, like you said, oddball feel, which is really awesome. So for anybody that backs the campaign, let everyone know what is it that you actually get, what comes in the hardcover, and what's actually available.
So I really like the model that Zoop is using for this campaign because basically a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, you've got levels and different packages that you can buy. And this is more like going to a grocery store. So you can buy just the hardcover book if that's all you want, but then there's all these add-ons. So you can add on, like you mentioned, the first appearance of Roswell issues of Simpsons comics, or the foreign editions, or there's some posters and prints. There's buttons. There's postcards. There's even some stuff that is not Roswell related. There's a Futurama blacklight poster that we did, and we did 6 blacklight posters that were in issues of Futurama comics, but they were folded in order to include them in the comic book. Well, I happen to have a ton of unfolded versions. So, if you're a Futurama fan and you want that blacklight poster, this is the only way you can get it unfolded. So there's other stuff like that. But in terms of the book itself, we did a trade paperback edition of Roswell while the original series was still running, and it included the first 3 issues plus the 4 chapters that appeared in Simpsons comics. So the preview chapters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the equivalent of 4 issues of Roswell. But we never collected the rest of it. So there were 3 issues that were never collected into a trade paperback of any kind. So this book collects all 6 issues of the original Bongo series, plus the 4-part preview that appeared in Simpsons comics. Plus, I did some stories that were in indie publications back then that were outside of the material that I did for Bongo. One of them is a story that I wrote for Dan DiCarlo to pencil, and then I did the inking. So it's written by me, inked by me, but drawn by Archie artist Dan DiCarlo. And then there's another story that's was for a book called Spark Generators, and it was all stories by comic artists talking about how they came up with whatever it is that they're known for, or whatever their own personal creator-owned thing that they're working on. So I did a 4-page thing about the development of Roswell, and so that's in there. There's some pinups that have never seen the light of day because they were planned for issues of Roswell that never came out. By the way, I stopped at 6 because Matt Groening asked me to start working on Futurama with him. So it was around the time that he was, coming up with what would be Futurama, and he needed some help developing the visual look of the show in order to pitch it to Fox.
Right.
So I had to set Roswell aside to help him with that, and then I just never came back to it. So there were things that were planned for subsequent issues that just never came out. I've got a Jack Davis pinup that was one of the last things Jack ever did that nobody's ever seen before. I've got a pinup by Eric Powell. I've got one by Art Balthazar. Mark Schultz from Xenozoic Tales is doing a new piece for me for this book, especially for this book. So there's a lot of fun extras, and but I think the main attraction is if you've never read Roswell, if you never picked up the original issues, this has everything that's been done to this date. It's all complete, and if it's successful, this will lead to the publication of new Roswell stories.
Yeah, it's fair to say that this is kind of the definitive edition. It includes, absolutely everything Roswell related up to this point, and hopefully, as Bill said, if this is successful, we can get more of the Roswell adventures, because I cannot stress how much fun this story is, how fun the characters are. I think it's great for new readers if you have young children that are interested in reading, or you want to get them interested in reading comics. Makes for a great bedtime story. You can read it together as a family. It's really awesome. So again, link in the show notes to go and check it out. There's a lot of those rewards, as Bill said. You can kind of pick and choose what you want. One thing he didn't mention, you can get original art, original commissions from Bill himself.
Right.
Obviously his art style. Part of a team for the Simpsons and Futurama or what have you. But man, to have something from this man, this incredible, talented artist. That we know from his work on Simpsons, Futurama, that sort of thing. That's a one of a kind. These opportunities, you don't do a lot of commissions. Am I right, Bill? It's not something that comes around every day.
No, I don't have a lot of time for commissions. I do them a lot at shows.
Right.
So if I'm at a convention, I'm sitting there for 7-8 hours, and that's mostly all I do. Well, once I'm home in my studio, I don't have a lot of time for it. So yeah, I am offering, you can get something as simple as a remark on the book or inside the book, or you can get head sketches, torso sketches, full figure, and they don't have to be Roswell related. If somebody wants a Homer Simpson or a Bender, I can do those as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So again, everybody, link in the show notes. Go and check it out. I'm also going to remind everyone, as I always do when we do these crowdfunding episodes, maybe you're a huge Simpsons fan, a huge fan of Bill, a huge fan of Futurama, what have you. Sounds right up your alley, but times are tight, right? We get that. And if you're unable to join the campaign, the other way you can help out Bill is to share this on social media. Let people know if you have other people that are Futurama fans or Simpsons fans or Bongo comics fans. I promise you they're going to love this. So make sure you let them know so they can get in on the campaign. And pick the rewards they want and what have you. Let your local comic shop know in case they want to get some copies for the shelf and that kind of thing. Let's spread the word and make sure everybody that might possibly be interested and is able to join the campaign has the opportunity to do so. That's again, other than joining the community that Bill is building here for Roswell, that's the other way that you can help out. So. fantastic. Congrats on funding already, Bill. I'm sure there's
Thank
always
you.
that trepidation, right? I'm going to do this thing. Is anybody going to show up? So that must have been a little bit of a relief that it funded so quickly.
It was not only a relief, it was exciting. Because I was kind of, I would, throughout the day, yesterday, I would sort of check back and see what the current level was. And it made the goal, I think, within 2 hours,
Yeah,
2 or 3
that's great.
hours. And then by the end of the day, it exceeded it. And, that, I mean, you can't wish for anything more than that. And then there are going to be some unlocking. I forget how they refer to these, but you basically, if it gets to a certain level, then it unlocks extra things in the book.
Right.
So it'll unlock end papers or special, maybe variant covers or spot UV. It'll make the book more special and deluxe.
Yeah, get a little more bang for your buck, everybody. And for you, I think, Bill, validating, right? It's been a while since this property's been out there. It sounds like you'd love to come back to it, so it's nice to know that the interest is there.
Just about every convention I do or every store signing, there always seems to be at least one person who, I meet at my table who asks me about Roswell. And, there's always somebody who says, are you ever going to bring Roswell back out? And that is like the best thing I can hear. That always brings a smile to my face. And I kind of, over the years, I've just tucked those away. When people come up to me and say that, it makes me think, yeah, I should probably do this someday. I mean, I'm amazed that after all these years, people still remember it. They're still interested in it. So now we're in the age of crowdfunding. And I just recently got the print rights from Bongo because Bongo, as many people know, closed its doors in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So I got an email from one of the lawyers one day, and they said, we're issuing you a quitclaim agreement for Roswell. And I didn't know what that was. And I said, is that a good thing? What's a quitclaim? They said, no, it's very good. It means we're giving you back the print rights. So I've always had the rights, it's a creator-owned property. So I've always had the right to go to another publisher and say, do you want to do new Roswell stories? But until now, I've never had the rights to reprint the Bongo material.
Mm.
So it was kind of the convergence of that happening, plus seeing a lot of my cartoonist friends having success with crowdfunding, that made me just think, now's the time. I know there are some people out there who still remember it and still want to see it. There's probably an untapped audience of people who weren't even alive when the original came out. So it just felt right. It felt like now's the time to do it.
Yeah, that's fantastic because, again, everybody, it has this really timeless feel, like those kind of like Looney Tunes cartoons, like it doesn't matter your age. They're just fun. They're timeless, the Roadrunner and the Coyote or, Bugs and Yosemite Sam. It's that kind of feel where it's humor that appeals to, a broad audience, fans of all ages, and I'm really glad and, again, excited for you that it funded so quickly. So as we're winding down here, Bill, any last thoughts for our audience?
I would just love to say thank you to everyone who's already backed the campaign. I can't thank you enough. It means a lot. I mean, obviously it means a lot financially to be able to, know that we've got enough money to put the book out. But on a different level, just to know that people still care about it, people want to reread it, people want to read new episodes, and I'm at a point where I'm freelancing, so the idea of me spending the next 10 or 20 years just working on my own property and being able to sustain that financially that's the best thing I could ever ask for. So for everybody who has backed it, for everyone who's thinking about backing it and may do it in the future, thank you. I can't thank you enough. It means everything to me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So again, everybody, link in the show notes. Go and check it out. I can't recommend it highly enough. I would love this thing to blow up because here's the thing: Bill's got some experience in the animation world. Man, pie in the sky. Not to put the cart ahead of the horse, but seeing this on the small screen as a cartoon, oh man, that would be amazing.
I actually, when Roswell was, when the early issues were in production, I had an agent in Hollywood, and the agent booked me all these meetings to go and pitch Roswell as a half-hour animated series. And we actually had it in development at Columbia TriStar. Mm. And I remember going to a meeting there, and I was in this kind of boardroom, meeting room, and there were all these images tacked up on the walls from another show that they were working on. And a lot of them had like a sci-fi kind of feel to it. So I was kind of curious about that. And turns out it was Men in Black. They were working on the Men in Black series. Yeah. And I don't know if this is the case. I don't want to throw accusations if they're not true or unwarranted. But they kind of just sat on Roswell. They didn't do anything with it until the option ran out. And by then, Men in Black was on the air. Mm-hmm. And so I cynically kind of thought, I wonder if they were kind of trying to keep it off the market until they got their sci-fi show out on the air. But anyway, that's Hollywood. And a lot of things like that happen that prevent things from getting on the air. So I'm really hoping, if this is successful and I can go out there and pitch it again and maybe avoid some of the Hollywood shenanigans this time, that would be a dream. I would love it.
Yeah, well, certainly, as opposed to back then, there's a lot more outlets now, right? We have streaming and a lot more kind of options for you, a lot more outlets and more kind of available avenues for it to be released. So, yeah, fingers crossed. I'd love to see it happen. And again, thank you so much for your time, Bill. Really excited to see that it funded already, and look forward to getting my copy.
Great. Thanks, Jace.
And to all you listeners out there in the audience or watching us on YouTube, we really appreciate you joining us, as always. Don't forget, share this with your friends. Let all your comic reading friends know, your animation friends, that this is out there and available. Take a couple minutes. Go to the link in the show notes to check it out. I promise it's worth your time. So we appreciate the support as always, everybody, and we will talk to you next time.
Thank you.